Hello everyone! Greetings everyone, my name is Jacob Q and I'm answering a question. This question is, how does the Constitution respond to the wants and needs of the American people? And when people ask me this, I always give them the same answer. The Constitution was created to form a more centralized government. Whatever was created before, the Articles of Confederation, the Bill of Rights, the Preamble, and even the Declaration of Independence had flaws in them. At the time, they seemed correct and worked. As time passed, the flaws in them started to show. Some inconvenience here and there, then the people became more and more ruffled. They finally created the Constitution, which took the failures of the past and revised it. Then, knowing what had been unsuccessful before, they were able to brew up something that gave the Americans what they wanted. So, the first thing I have on my list is, oh yes! The events leading up to the Declaration of
Independence. Don't, you can't say, oh yes.
First thing I have on my list is, the events leading up to the Declaration of Independence. So these events are the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, the Quartering Act, the Township Act, and finally the Boston Massacre. The Sugar Act was taxes on sugar, molasses, coffee, and other sugary products. The Stamp Act focused on things like paper, books, and messages. The Quartering Act, which allowed soldiers to house themselves in American homes. And our final act would be the Township Act, which worked upon wood, paint, and other building materials. The final event would be the Boston shooting. I refuse to say massacre because only 7 casualties in total. 3 were killed by firearms, 3 succumbed to their wounds, and 2 were simply wounded. Hardly massacre. But anyways, all these contributed to creating the Constitution. The Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, and the Township Act all were unfair taxation, which led to the creation of the 16th Amendment. The Quartering Act led to the creation of the 3rd Amendment, which wrote that the soldiers could not force themselves into civilian homes. They could only quarter themselves there if it was agreed by the House participants. Boston shooting created the 1st Amendment, the right to petition, among other things. These ill-advised judgments made the colonists feel if they were cramped and had no rights to act. The Declaration of Independence itself. It does not have many flaws, but does have one. I quote, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, with among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, do you see anything missing? Oh yes, the fact that they left out the women and the men of other races. These lead to the 13th and 19th Amendment, the 13th stating that slaves are no more, and the 19th which allowed women to vote, among other things. Now that we are along the words of slavery, we come across the 3/5 Compromise, which follows upon the 12th Amendment, while counting for the 30,000 residents for an extra representative, the slaves and the people without lands only received 3/5 of a person. And I quote from the History Channel. Lincoln realized that it was a folly to wage such a bloody war without plans to eliminate slavery. In September 1862, following the Union victory at the Battle of Antietam in Maryland, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring all slaves in territory still in rebellion on January 1st, 1863, would be declared free forever. The move was largely symbolic, as it only freed slaves in areas outside of the Union, but it changed the conflict from a war for the reunification of states to a war whose objectives included the destruction of slavery. In 1864, Congress debated several proposals. Some insisted on including provisions to prevent discrimination against blacks, but the Senate Judiciary Committee provided the eventual language. It borrowed from the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, when slavery was banned from the north area of the Ohio River. The Senate passed the amendment in April 1865. End quote. Lincoln believed that the Americans could survive without racial discrimination. At the end of the Civil War, racial discrimination had not stopped until the late 1800s. Well, he tried. He stopped slavery, but however, the darkness in other people's hearts still felt desired to hurt other people with different skin colors. Then came the Great Compromise. There were some plans to vote for president and other issues nationally. The Virginia Plan wanted to have the representatives by population solely. The smaller states feared that the state's voice would not be heard. Then came the New Jersey Plan, which said that every state receives an equal amount of representatives regardless of population. But then the bigger states rebutted by asking another question. If they were larger than the smaller states, then shouldn't they receive more representatives to represent the people? They settled with the 12th Amendment, which recalls that each state always receives 2 representatives, and 1 more for every 30,000 residents. And the final topic I must speak about is the Articles of Confederation and its failure. It calls that all states have the right to govern themselves. Quote from About Education. Following is the list of weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. Each state only has 1 vote in Congress, regardless of size. Congress does not have the power to tax. Congress does not have the power to regulate a foreign and interstate commerce. There was no executive branch to enforce any acts passed by Congress. There was no national court system. Amendments to the Articles of Confederation required an anonymous vote. Laws required a 9/13 majority to pass in Congress. End quote, end quote. This did not please a Revolutionary War veteran, Daniel Shea. He retired from the war and became a peaceful farmer on the countryside. But when the Articles of Confederation was created, things became unjust. Because the states had the right to govern themselves, they could raise the amount of money printed, the price of merchandise, and other variables. When attempted to start a new farm somewhere else, it took toll on stricken civilians. The people in debt were locked up without a fair trial, which invokes the 5th Amendment, which allows a fair trial upon the prosecuted to call upon witnesses who may free a victim. Many farmers were cooped up in small, dank, unsurvivable conditions. Shea, angered, gathered his followers and shut down as many courthouses as possible. It began. It actually began. He planned to head for the capital of the new America and tear it down brick by brick. However, many of his fellow farmers lacked firearms and sharp utensils. They planned a 3-pronged attack on the Springfield Armory. If he had received those weapons, then he would have stormed the capital successfully. However, his plan was discovered by the defenders of the armory, and the letters of assault were never received. When the battle came to pass, Shea's men were slaughtered like sheep, and the remaining men fled, and later were caught. Almost all of them are pardoned, but 2 of them were hanged.
Hung.
But 2 of them were hung. After the Articles of Confederation, the capital was shocked on how close they were to collapsing. At the end, they scrapped the Articles of Confederation and adapted the Constitution, which allowed more power to the government. In the end, where does it leave us? Well, after all that, all we have is to answer the original question. The Constitution satisfies the wants and needs of the American people by giving us rights and making us equal. Each and every amendment gave us something more. When the white people discriminated against the black people, the 13th Amendment was created to free the blacks from the white people. It made them more equal. And when women weren't allowed to vote, they were infuriated by their voice not being heard. Sounds postmodern. When women couldn't vote, the 19th Amendment changed that. Women were infuriated that their voices weren't being heard, and they did it, which made them more equal. And even the First Amendment helped us in that. The Boston Massacre, when people petitioned, they were murdered. And now, it gives us the right to speak and express ourselves, and that makes us happy. That makes us satisfied. And now to answer our final question. How does the Constitution satisfy the wants and needs of the American people? By giving us our rights.
And violating them every day.
I guess. Now, to answer the final question, how does the amendment satisfy the wants and needs of the American people? By giving us rights, by allowing us to express ourselves, and by making us equal.
By making us equal.
In the arms of the angel, fly away from here, from this dark hotel room, and something to do with tears. Okay, that's it. We're done. We're done here. Yes, we finished. We finished. We is the finished.